everybody as the third cohort, and we are excited and really looking forward to working with you and learning new things about how our 5G network is going to be used. Just as a brief introduction, my name is John Saw. I am responsible for advanced and emerging technologies at New T-Mobile. My team is chartered with looking around the corners to figure out what the next capabilities or emerging trends that we will need to enable our customers to use more 5G. So we're interested in new use cases and working with startups like yourselves to accelerate the adoption of 5G, and hopefully it's a win-win opportunity for you as well. Hopefully you can use this as an opportunity to take your business to the next level. So that's a brief intro for me. Actually, I guess prior to joining T-Mobile, I was CTO at Sprint before the merger. This is about a year ago that we closed the merger, and before that, I was also working in a startup like yourselves. I was a second employee at a startup called Clearwire. They were subsequently acquired by SoftBank and merged with Sprint. And during my time at Clearwire, we hired a marketing whiz kid that we thought had a lot of potential to help us. It's Mike Sievert. He's now CEO of New T-Mobile. So there you go, small world. Never burn your bridges.
Speaking of bridges, Caroline passes her regards on. We were on call with her yesterday, and she wanted us to tell you hello.
I also heard what she said. Did she say yesterday that she's better looking than me and more charming? Did she say that?
I don't know. We'll have Sean Underwood answer that one.
John, Caroline, she would never say that, would she?
That sounds exactly like Caroline.
Caroline's a good friend, and she's right. But here's one thing I have going for me. I do have the country's biggest 5G network, and she doesn't. and when you talk about 5G, right, it's your 5G network that counts, not the looks.
I will relay that with relish.
Oh, please do make sure she hears this.
Awesome. Thank you, John.
So should we start, or?
Yeah, let's do that. Absolutely.
Do we need to introduce the other T-Mobile people on the call, or not? Are we familiar with people?
Amanda has not formally been introduced, and so certainly Lee, Rick, and others have had lots of time with the teams. But if you want to go a quick round to introduce everyone, we can.
Maybe Amanda should introduce herself. I'm not sure who else is on there. If you don't think you're known to the team, please do introduce yourself. I cannot see the list of attendees, by the way. I can see some video screenshots at the bottom. Looks like there's 43 people on.
52.
50
yeah, we have 52. We got a big turnout today. Yeah. Amanda, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. So Amanda Todd, as John said, I work on his team, and my role is to help lead the strategic planning efforts as it relates to emerging technologies and working across the technology and ecosystem teams within John's organization as well as cross-functionally at T-Mobile to really try and bring some of the 5G use cases and some of the 5G opportunities that we can develop in partnership with folks like yourselves to life. And so I'm really excited to be here today and looking forward to meeting each of you.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Ron, I think you've met most everybody, but if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, you're welcome to as well.
Is Ron on?
He is. He's on mute. There he is.
It's double mute. Ron Marquardt. I lead the small technical team that works for John that's focused on RAN core devices and use cases, and very glad to see all of you.
Thank you, Ron. Is there anybody we missed from the T-Mobile side? No? Okay. I think we're ready to go then.
All right, let me kick this off. We can make this interactive. If you have a question, you can jump in, or we can have a quick Q&A at the end as well. Maybe to start off with, on this chart here, we're going to be spending upwards of $40 billion building what I think is going to be the best 5G network in the country. Unlike Verizon, who just announced that they're going to be charging a premium to pay for their crazily expensive C-band spectrum, we're not charging extra for 5G. Customers will get the best of what we can offer on the network side. We're free and clear unencumbered 5G spectrum. Unencumbered 5G spectrum, unencumbered is a keyword, right? All the operators in the country have a lot of spectrum, but for AT&T and Verizon, most of the spectrum is tied up supporting and serving their LTE customers. The whole rationale for the merger between Sprint and T-Mobile is to free up spectrum that we can use for 5G, and that is why we have to leave. So because of that, we're actually accelerating the 5G build at a very fast pace. We're putting up about 1,000 new 5G sites on our network as we speak. So that's a fairly rapid pace. The next chart shows the progress we've made compared to the competitors. We cover, as of yesterday's update, 287 million people, and with the mid-band spectrum that we have from Sprint, 2.5 gigahertz, we call it ultra high band, high cap. I mean, we cover 125 million people now, which is very rapid progress. When we started building this only like in April last year, about a year ago. As you can see from these maps here, our 5G footprint is bigger than AT&T and Verizon combined, right? And this is why, this is what's forcing AT&T and Verizon to go spend upwards of $80 billion between the two of them for the new C block, right? The merger of Sprint and T-Mobile actually pushed them to go spend $80 billion. Otherwise, their 5G footprint is really nothing much. Especially if you're talking about Verizon, who's still just using millimeter wave for the 5G build. So with the C block, they would expect to build a footprint that would match ours. But we have to lead in terms of time and also in terms of performance. And despite spending $80 billion between the two of them, if you look at the next page, we still have more cellular spectrum than them. And that's the irony. I think we just did a press release yesterday that says $40 billion will buy Verizon a lot of things, but not 5G leadership, right? It just shows the depth of the spectrum that new T-Mobile has, right? Spending $80 billion is actually good for us because they're not going to spend that to compete against us by customer acquisition or incentives, right? They're buying something that we already have. This chart, by the way, this table here, I cut and pasted from light reading. As we are speaking now, we have an analyst meeting going on right now, actually, and Neville Ray is on the other meeting talking about our spectrum position. So I don't want to steal the thunder, but we just copied and pasted this from an article that I think has a pretty reasonable estimate, right? The key point is, despite the C block auction, and we heard how much those two guys spent on it, they still cannot beat us in terms of spectrum depth. Right. Now, not only in spectrum depth, but also in spectrum quality. The C band is actually a pig dog to deploy. I've deployed 3.5 in Europe before, and it's not easy, right? And C band being higher frequency, and if you spend $45 billion on 3.5 gigahertz, you still cannot change the laws of physics. You will require 1.5 times to 4 times more cell sites to match just our 2.5 gigahertz footprint, right? That is the awful truth that Verizon did not talk about in their analyst meeting yesterday, right? They mentioned that they will need an incremental of $10 billion to deploy C-band. I think that is hopelessly too optimistic. They were going to end up spending more than that just to match our ultra-high band coverage with 2.5 gigahertz. So that puts us in a lead position that I don't think we're going to ever let Verizon overtake us. If you look back at the history of LTE, Verizon was the first to build an LTE network in this country more than 10 years ago now. And candidly, they have never really given up the lead, right? Every ad you see from Verizon touts their network quality and network depth, right? Guess what? 5G is our turn because of the lead that we have and the breadth of coverage we do and the depth of spectrum that we can deploy, right? No amount of money is going to allow them to outspend us in terms of performance because we have the spectrum depth that is part of a bigger global ecosystem than those two guys. In terms of phones, every iconic phone that we have from major manufacturers like Apple and Samsung and OnePlus, LG, and Google supports our 5G spectrum bands since mid 2019. So since then, our major iconic phone models all support 5G. So that puts us in a really good position in terms of adoption rate and also in terms of the experience that our customers can get. So next chart basically shows the potential for 5G. And I think I am preaching to the choir here in terms of what 5G can bring. That's the whole reason why I think you guys are part of the cohort number 3, is that hopefully 5G is able to help you leverage something more than what you can do without 5G. Unlike LTE, 5G will bring new capabilities beyond just mobile broadband. Right to the right of this chart, you'll see ultra reliable, very low latency, very high availability capabilities that you will not get with LTE, but you can do with 5G, right? For applications like remote manufacturing, remote healthcare, remote training, autonomous vehicles, traffic safety, right? That requires a high degree of real-time capability and a high degree of quality in terms of coverage. Towards the left of the mobile broadband chart, we also have the capabilities for really low cost, low energy, small data volumes, but massive numbers. These are the machines that we're talking about, IoT devices, right, for smart meters, smart agriculture sensors, tracking, logistics, fleet management, right? So essentially, I think 5G is the first G that's actually being designed from the ground up to disrupt many vertical industries. If we go to the next page, here are some examples of them, right? What could a 5G future bring? I think, as generic a data layer as LTE is, it has actually brought about new capabilities and new companies like Uber and Snapchat, right? Even companies like Apple and Amazon were able to take their business to the next level by leveraging a strong LTE network. Imagine what 5G can bring in each of these vertical industries, right? For automotive, on-demand information today to autonomous control, even for fan experiences, screens everywhere, going to a more immersive experience with augmented reality, virtual reality, and stuff like that. So I wouldn't need to go through the list again. I'm sure you guys are experts in your respective areas. The nice thing about Open Innovation Lab is that we're trying to work with smart companies like yourselves to build an ecosystem that's bigger than ourselves, right? And so I spend a lot of time with Jim and the Open Innovation Lab because of the opportunities it brings us to introduce our network and capabilities so that smart folks like yourself can innovate on it, and hopefully it will help accelerate your business growth when you add 5G capabilities. The T-Mobile Accelerator is the same concept. It's an in-house incubator that we are working with startups. This year, we're bringing in a cohort in the next few weeks focused on augmented reality, mixed reality as well. We've recently expanded the accelerator to include a living lab in Atlanta, in Peachtree Corners for autonomous driving, as well as for smart city concepts. Peachtree Corners is actually a living city with about 8,000 inhabitants, but they have made the city widely available to put in sensors for smart cities and DSRC and cellular V2X capabilities on their test track, which is also serves as a regular roadway as well. Talking about live labs, we'll work with Jim and our partners like Intel and Microsoft to build a a open innovation living farm in north of Seattle. I call this a 5G farm. Essentially, we intend to put 5G sensors out there, working with some of the startups from the Open Innovation Lab to figure out if we can actually make farming to be more profitable and to be more optimized in the use of resources. As we know, farming is very resource intensive, especially with natural resources. If we can help them with artificial intelligence, predict the weather forecast better and more optimally use natural resources, right? Can we have a better food resiliency capability in this country? That's the opportunity for that. The one thing I didn't talk about, if you go back to the previous page, T-Mobile Ventures is our in-house venture arm. This basically, we're working with bringing in companies with funding for promising companies that has capabilities and technology that we need and that we think could help accelerate their business. Our folks in T-Mobile Ventures would love to talk to them. I'm on the investment committee, so you can see a common thread there between the startups that we work with, the incubators that we work with, and also potentially a venture arm in T-Mobile that we can invest in. And we work very closely with Jim and company on with the T-Mobile Ventures as well to see other companies that we should be taking the next steps with beyond the Open Innovation Lab. Maybe I should stop here and talk about what are some of the things that we have done with the previous cohorts from the Open Innovation Lab, and I'm just going to highlight two examples here because I have charts for them and a video. I'm sure there's more that I think I'll get Rick and Lee to talk to. The first one is what I said earlier. I think a low-hanging fruit opportunity for 5G is that augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality is going to work so much better with 5G. You're no longer limited by the limitations of Wi-Fi in terms of coverage, and you're not going to be limited by the limitations of LTE in terms of latency or capacity, right? So we're not talking about AR, VR for Oculus headsets just for gaming, although I think that's a growing area. Immersive entertainment, metaverse, that's a new buzzword this week. If you guys have been following that crazy growth with the company that's building a whole alternate reality world where not only do you play games, but you live in it too. But I'm also talking about using AR and VR for frontline workers, right? Industrial use cases, immersive assisted, see what I see. Training and education. Certainly our kids are finding new ways to learn these days with the pandemic, right? Can AR and VR help them with training and education in colleges and in medical schools? And then, we have also been working on extended wear, augmented reality glasses. Is it possible someday to ask our customers to, hey, put your phones in your pocket and use an extended wear AR glasses as your screen? And we can augment your experience with augmented reality, right? For instance, if you're in a foreign country, your glasses will help translate all the foreign signs you're looking at. Or if you're on a bike and needing directions with Google Maps, your smart glasses can help direct you with navigation, right? So those are some of the concepts that we would love to explore with startups and with our own testing as well. And I know some of you are focused in this area, but AR, VR is certainly one area that we think is ripe for disruption with 5G. So recently we worked with one of the graduates from the Open Innovation Lab, Tactile. They've created a software AR platform called Manifest that allows them to adapt this to support many frontline industries. So as a test, we actually brought them in and married them with one of our cell site construction subcontractors, TCI. And we wanted to see if, with augmented reality, can they build our cell sites or commission stuff faster and more streamlined with less mistakes. And the results are gratifying. In fact, we're going to be expanding this now with other contractors. And hopefully this is just a showcase, right, that the enterprise team can use to show the potential of using AR in the front line for other verticals as well, including healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, as well. So if we can, let's play that video just to show you some of the work we did with Tactile who was, I think, part of cohort 1, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Tactile is doing fascinating work building augmented reality solutions for frontline workers. Recently, we conducted a field trial in Boston with Tactile and Timberline Communications.
We worked closely with TCI to address a couple of issues that they have. They have a lot of electricians, folks who need to be able to climb towers safely and support the rollout of 5G infrastructure. Let's say, for example, you are out there in the field and you need to connect to an expert remotely. Low latency and high bandwidth is a big deal.
The AR headset is connected to T-Mobile's 5G network using software hosted in the cloud. The AR headset allows the field tech to see a list of tasks and instructions with content that is superimposed over their environment. The tech can control the AR software with gestures and voice commands, and the headset's built-in two-way video, they can collaborate with remote subject matter experts. AR and VR applications are going to transform virtually every industry, from healthcare to agriculture to manufacturing, just about everything. We are so excited to see how T-Mobile's 5G network with that low latency and high bandwidth is going to fuel these great innovations.
Awesome. Another startup that we work with from the Open Innovation Lab, I think they are also from cohort 1, is Omnivore, who is working on live holograms. And basically, the use case we're trying to solve is pretty simple. I think by now all of us are we're suffering from Zoom fatigue with too many two-dimensional Zoom calls. I have like 5 already today and probably another 2 more to go for the rest of the day. Wouldn't it be cool if we can actually do in 3 dimension? Because we all, humans live and breathe in 3D. So one of the things we did with Omnivore is that, holograms have been around for a long time, right? You've seen them in movies, you've seen them in retail promotions lately, right? But most of these holograms are pre-recorded, right? Which is not that hard to do, right? I call them on-demand holograms. But for live holograms, where you actually have a 3D rendition of yourself talking to someone live on a conference call, that's harder to do. And Omnivore has solved all the triple integrals to be able to create a 3-dimensional rendition and then transmit it over 5G so that you can actually see it using nothing but a 5G smartphone, right? That's the innovation there. So to see how well it works, I actually did an all-hands call 3 weeks ago with my own team. This is probably the first all-hands call for sure in T-Mobile and maybe anywhere in the world. You can see in the bottom pictures there is the behind-the-scenes view of what the studio looks like at the TechX Center in Bellevue, right? Basically doing the all-hands call live, both over 2-dimensional Zoom and over 3-dimensional Omnivore platform. The picture on the right is what one of the employees saw in Kansas City. He can watch my all hands via his laptop through a regular 2-dimensional Zoom call, or he can use his 5G smartphone and actually have my hologram, in this case, standing on his laptop next to Adam, who is the CEO of Omnivore. The interesting thing is that Adam and I are not even in the same city, yet our holograms are appearing in his living room at the same time. Which potentially could give you a future view of what conferences could be like. Instead of everybody flying to the same conference center, we could just teleport there digitally and send our holograms. Anyway, it's something, a bit far out to the future, but something that seems very possible when you marry the right technology over a strong 5G network. So when employees are able to communicate with 3-dimensional holograms in an all-hands meeting, you can see some creative ways here on this map in how they actually listen to the all-hands meeting in Bellevue, in Kansas City, in Ashburn, Virginia, where we had a snowstorm that day, but it doesn't seem to face the hologram. And this employee in Naples probably had too much to drink.
I was going to say.
Listening to the.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, is that a toilet? Sorry, John.
It is a toilet.
All right.
I was thinking that maybe we should fire this guy, but HR said you cannot fire him because holograms are not real.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to get John to say "Save me, Obi-Wan," but I'm still waiting for it.
That's funny.
There you go. So these are just two examples of two of the startups that we have met. With Jim's Open Innovation Lab. We clearly enjoy working with them. There are some real use cases that we can be deploying, but this is not just two. There's a whole bunch more that we're doing some work with. I think Lee, you're doing some work with another company, right? You want to talk about that, Lee? Is Lee on?
Yeah, I'm here. Expedo is another cohort graduate that we're engaged with, and the short version of what they do is they implement private networks, but their value add is that they extend the privacy and security you get in a private network out into the macro network and allow you to kind of bifurcate IoT assets and treat them, manage them differently. We've been working with them both in the strategic initiatives that John talked about, but also in looking at customer pilots now. And then the other piece too, I think that is important, is that these startups don't represent the full engagement. We have a mentoring program where there's a lot of discussions with technical teams, with business teams, with these startups. So it's not just about commercial traction and launches. There's a lot of learning that goes on both for us and for the startups in those kind of meetings that happen broadly.
Cool. Rick, any examples on your side?
No, I think I was thinking about Expedo. That just one thing I want to address. In the Intel intro, one of the founders had mentioned that telcos are where startups go to die, and there is a long history of that predates T-Mobile. But this is not the place for that. In setting up our venture fund, I think the scenario that we looked at was, we invest a lot of time and money into a startup, and then they have an opportunity to go work with AT&T. What do we do? And the answer is we do our best to help them with that opportunity. Jim came to the table with a great philosophy. I bring a background as an entrepreneur, so I understand the constant formula that's going through your head. And when we sat down as a team and we tried to figure out which startups do we want to work with, our primary concern is which startups can we provide a great experience for. So this is it's a different environment than we're not here to touch the butterfly wings, and we're also not here to overpromise, but we are here to do our best to help you with your goals.
You got me at butterfly wings. I have to think through that, but Rick is a very wise man, I'm sure. That's very deep there. There are some good questions on the chat board, by the way. I noticed there's one. Given that 5G marks a shift into software-based cloud-native infrastructure, where do you see the biggest challenges and corresponding opportunities for startups to help ensure the best user experience, specifically machine learning, AI technologies, for security, service assurance, life management? I'll let the other folks jump in, and Ron, you might, this seems up your alley. You might want to jump in on that. But before I say that, AI and machine learning, is cool these days. But the math behind it has been around for a while, and I often jokingly say, all that intelligence and know where to go, right? That's why you need 5G. We can expand the use of AI and machine learning to so many places. If we bring in a catalyst like 5G. A lot of you are experts in AI and machine learning, right? Every moment in time counts for you, depending on how fast the network can react, right? If you're 1 millisecond late, the information you bring to the end user would be useless. That's where 5G comes in. And so I see an important marriage between bringing 5G as a catalyst for capabilities to bring AI and machine learning to help secure Industry 4.0, to help enable Industry 4.0 capabilities, right? We talk about building a new infrastructure in this country. We're not going to build the factories of yesterday using yesterday's technology. We're going to build it with infrastructure, with Industry 4.0 capabilities enabled with 5G, right? Ron, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think just to expand on it, we did, this is back in the days at Sprint, right before the merger, we did a survey of vendors we were talking to, some big, some small, some well-established, some new. And the challenge with AI ML is that many people say they have it, and then when you just scratch below the surface, they actually don't. Some people include technologies that are like 20 years old. So part of our challenge, the gist of the question was more for an internal use, but I think John spun it around because I think our real interest is trying to figure out how we can enable it coupled with our 5G to offer services. But from an internal use perspective, it's a constant desire to look at new technologies to make ourselves more efficient. And I think every area mentioned and many, many more, how to site millimeter wave sites, there's a whole bunch of different areas we can use internal tools. But to John's point, the big opportunity, we believe, because those things are happening to some degree, maybe in some areas more than others, the big degree is figuring out how we can leverage capabilities you have as use cases to work together to monetize your technology at the edge with our 5G, and that's really what excites us.
Ron, if I could.
Question here.
Oh,
sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
I was just. I think a question on my mind, and maybe others as well, John, is, as you mentioned earlier in your talk, this G is a different G from other Gs. It's a G into cloud native. It's not just a generational move in terms of spectral efficiency and the use of broader sets of spectrum for connectivity, but it's also putting cloud native capabilities on your edge. And so if you think about the great value that T-Mobile brings today and reimagining that value in the world of software, there's a lot there to be explored, right? And that's really the genesis of why we're partnering so deeply together. But given all that opportunity, right, I think there's a crawl, walk, and run before carriers, and especially T-Mobile in this case, get there. Do you have any thoughts on what is that crawl, what is that walk, what is that run? Because ultimately you're sitting on this really massive opportunity to engage in the software ecosystem, which all of these scenarios and use cases really come to life in new ways.
I think, in my view, the part of the crawl, walk, run is to sit down and partner with the enterprises into what pain points they're trying to solve. There's so many buzzwords out there. Sometimes when we meet with the enterprises, they will throw out in the first 10 minutes, I need an edge compute capability from you, or I need a private network. And if you dive a little bit deeper, right, that may not be what they need, right? The 5G latency is going to be awesome, much better than LTE by itself. That, in a lot of applications, I bet my rent money, you may not need an edge. And if you do need an edge, we'll help you get there. And there's a lot of smart people that can help solve that. So we need to make sure that we don't get killed by all the buzzwords and focus on what's needed. The other thing I like about the Open Innovation Lab and working with you guys is that, we can bring you along to work with one of our biggest enterprises in the country, right? If you can bring a solution that we need. Right. I think Tactile is one example, right? Their Manifest platform can help transform Federal Express, UPS, Walmart, great people that we do business with, right? It's very hard for a Tactile to go and knock on Federal Express's door and say, hey, I got something you might need, right? But these guys are looking for an end-to-end solution, right? That is more than just what one startup can bring. And that's where, in terms of crawl, walk, run, this is what we need to do: set up partnerships with enterprises, right? And we want to penetrate, grow our enterprise capabilities. But we need to also bring something to the table that AT&T and Verizon doesn't have, which is potentially the secret sauce that you guys have, right? So let's build some partnerships together. Go do some proof of concepts. Right? Show them what a real edge can do with AI and machine learning and capabilities like that.
Perfect. Makes sense. Eric, you had asked a question around standout cases of achievement. I think we've covered a couple of them. Did you want to add any more to that question, or are you good?
No, I think that's fine. I probably asked my question too early, and it was covered very admirably well by John. So that's all good. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. So Eric, we don't have a common scorecard for everybody that will score you. I think a lot of it is how much traction we get with you and how much work a measure of success is are we still working together after the cohort is done? We brought up two examples with folks like Expedo or Omnivore and Tactile. I mean, we've been working with them for a year now, right? Way after they graduated from the Open Innovation Lab. Now, to be candid, we don't do this with every startup, but with those that we actually see traction and we see promise and we see opportunities. So it's different for every company, and certainly this is not a place where startups go to die. At least not in a new age. Like I said, we need to partner with the smartest people we can get to go win business in the enterprise, and that's the whole idea why we're funding Jim, right? I cannot show up candidly and try to sell more phones and lines to big enterprises that Verizon, AT&T can do a better job than I could, right? We need to come with something better, right? Better security capability, better offerings.
So on that note, Greg from Matilda, did you want to ask your question?
Sure, I'm happy to. John, thanks so much for the information. Congratulations. It seems like you guys are definitely winning. I was thinking, though, about all the different applications, what I'd call mission critical apps, right? From the government to the manufacturing floor, and even to some of the examples that you just showed. Certainly the threat vector is big. The more devices, the more opportunity to do malicious things. So how's T-Mobile handling the security kind of from soup to nuts?
Candidly, we're still working on it. And one of the reasons why we invited Attila and it's on our list, because I think you bring potential solutions that could help, especially with massive number of machines. It's an important focus. If you look at our T-Mobile venture funds, one of the pillars that we invest in a lot is companies who can help us with security, right? And that's a very important aspect. In fact, Ron, you want to jump in on that since that's your interest as well.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. We can't solve every security problem ourselves. Obviously, we make the network as secure as we can. For enterprise customers, there's a lot of deployment and use case specific knowledge they bring to the table, what they need to secure and how they need to secure it. I think it's like everything else in this industry that we need solutions like yours and frankly others, because there's no one size fits all security solution that's important to bring to bear. We have Lyle Pukowski on, for example. We have a fair amount of IPR really looking at better authenticating endpoints with each other, whether it's an IoT endpoint authenticating back to the server that's going to be delivering its new firmware update or something like that. We're not necessarily going to be the ones that provide that in all cases, but we wanted to make sure we covered some of this technology and offered these capabilities up as we thought through the space, and it's going to require partners to bring that to bear.
Music to my ears. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Greg.
Kevin?
Thank you, Jim. John, thanks for sharing, by the way. So I work for a company by the name of Symmetric, and we're assisting a great deal of customers as they progress across their intelligent edge strategy. And as Jim just said, 5G is not like 4G at all, because the compute is coming, which has an implication upon business process automation at those devices, which is a material opportunity in the enterprise, which, as we talked about yesterday, is a material change in technical strategy, business strategy. I'm just curious what you're seeing at the outset of enterprises and CTOs as they're talking with T-Mobile about the implications and the timetable of adopting 5G in the enterprise, because it does have a material influence on their intelligent edge strategy. It has a material influence on how they're trying to run automation. But it's an evolution and adoption across many facets of the business. So I'm just curious how they're coming and proactively working with T-Mobile to become 5G ready.
Very good question, Kevin. Hey, Lee, you want to take a stab at that since they're coming from the enterprise space, or did I just surprise you?
Yeah, you just surprised me. So I'm gonna ask someone else to take that one.
I tell you what. So while you think through it, Kevin, the enterprises we speak to are obviously looking at, the whole reason why they are wanting to talk to us is because they are trying to transform their business as well. And every vertical that we're looking at is ripe for transformation. And if anything we learned from a pandemic is we have accelerated the transformation of many businesses now to go more digital, right? If you're trying to bring in new capabilities, let's say to a factory, with what I call Industry 4.0 capabilities, you need to be working on with technology that has the ability to be a catalyst for that, like 5G, right? So as you talk to these enterprises, they are asking for edge compute capabilities, and what they're really asking for is that I need to bring the computing and cloud capabilities closer to where the action is happening. And I have distributed businesses. I have robots that's now replacing manual labor in my factory floor that needs access to AI, fast, real-time capabilities, right? And that's why they are talking to us about concepts like private networks and edge compute, right? But if you really look at the heart of what they're asking for, is really I need to bring some of this new algorithms, AI, and closer to the factory floor where I can make things happen, right? And I need to distribute them all over the country, right? So every industry is different. I was just talking, this is just an example in manufacturing. Same thing with healthcare, right? We're talking to hospital systems where, to them, use cases varies from, hey, can we use your smartphone to be a diagnostics tool instead of shipping new tools to customers with a focus now on teledoc and telemedicine, right? Can customers do more to help me with the diagnostics, right? We were talking to physicians where they say, hey, they're working on an app where just by coughing to your smartphone, they can tell whether you're asthmatic or not, right? Capabilities like this. So can you do more with a smartphone over a fast 5G network so that you don't have to wait for the results, right? So that we can treat and talk to our patients better, right? The future of healthcare is a day, my personal view is that hospitals will just become data centers where patients don't even need to come to your hospitals anymore. We take care of them. We do diagnostics with what they have, with wearables in their homes, right? In that respect, Kevin, right? Can you bring the edge to your customer's house or to places where they can get to faster than drive 2 hours to a hospital, right? That's the exact problem we're trying to solve with the VA hospitals all over the country where we are a major vendor. So there's so many use cases. I think Ron's team was talking to some physicians in a hospital system where, can we use 5G to help stroke victims, right? One of the, we lose a lot of people in this country because we do not have enough time to diagnose whether they are suffering from a stroke or whether what type of stroke they're having while they're rushing them to the hospital. If we can equip an ambulance with 5G capabilities with diagnostics tool, right? Can we do more? Because every minute counts, right? Yeah. In your average 30-minute ride. So in this case, can you bring an edge into that ambulance that is moving at 50 miles an hour, right? What can we do for that patient, right? So that's a real use case that we're trying to solve with these guys, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of examples, and if we boil down to it, right, it comes down to bringing intelligence faster to where they think their action is using 5G as a catalyst.
And John, you said is I would used to be very close to the VA. The VA would, you probably have heard this, they would articulate that they have a $400 million antiquated network problem because they want to run distributed edge-driven solutions, but their network being run by the government is a little antiquated. But something you just I used to be the exec sponsor for the VA, so I understand that pain point very well. But something you just said, and I asked Jim if I could follow up on it, is what we see a great deal, and this is part of my question to you, is we see a lot of intelligent edge devices just running automation. But with the promise of 5G, there's more business process automation that they should be running on those devices. And I think that is the material opportunity for T-Mobile to engage enterprises for them to understand with compute on those devices, with security on those devices, how they'll automate more business process, just as you were talking about, rather than just run automation. They're automating business process and digitizing their business. And that's where I think there is a proactive opportunity to engage T-Mobile customers and really drive the possibilities of what they can achieve.
And Kevin, we would love to work with you to uncover that capability. If we can bring this value add to our enterprise customers, it's going to be a win-win opportunity that we can offer them for sure.
It is. Well, I'll circle back through Jim on it, but that is something that led me away from Silicon Valley into what I'm doing, and I think it's the promise of automating business process at the edge is digitizing every customer value that we can impact. So I'll circle back. Jim, thank you for the time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the question, Kevin. Hey, John, do you mind if we go back on the, you made a comment around private enterprise networking, and T-Mobile has had several conversations with customers, and in some cases, it's not what they needed, but they needed something else. Without breaking any confidentiality, could you share what some of those something else's were beyond private connectivity that they're really needing?
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't need a private network, but there are so many different flavors of private networks out there. In some cases, what they're trying to solve may not necessarily be a private network. But I think if you look at the reasons why they're looking at the private networks, right? The motivation is, like I say, to bring, better connectivity and more intelligence and more capability to where they are needed, right? And the other thing is that private enterprises, private networks, that is another buzzword that's happening right now. I think it makes sense for a lot of companies, right? Because Wi-Fi will take you so far, but if you want really secure, highly reliable capability, you may need to look past Wi-Fi, and that's where potentially a private 5G network could play a role, right? I see the rationale for that, right? But yet at the same time, when we talk to them, we also learned that a private 5G network cannot exist as an island, right? You need to integrate it somehow to the macro network, and this is where we come in, hopefully with your capabilities to secure it, right? So there's no such thing as a private island network by itself. It's usually a hybrid, right? That's one of the things we learn, right? And when they ask for edge compute, it's usually a private edge, right? So that they can keep the data local and whatever they want to do with it. Sometimes they will need a public cloud, and you have Amazon, Google, and Azure to go to, right? How do you put all these pieces together? Is where the value add that we bring. Yeah,
I think you nailed it, because taking your analogy of the island a step further, a network without any compute nearby is just a network, right? And the networks exist to support compute. Compute exists to support apps. So you're nailing it. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. Let's if you don't mind, I'd love to get your perspective. I'm going to give a little knock to the Verizon folks, because at the last and first CBRS auction for priority access licenses back in, I think it was July, Verizon came out as I think almost a 2 billion of the 4.2 billion sold that during that auction. What do you think their strategy is behind buying all that CBRS? I've heard everything from they're squatting on a bunch of assets in some critical markets just to kind of hold it until they can figure out what to do with it. And I've heard other perspectives like, no, this is pretty strategic to them. So, but I'd love to get your perspective on what you think's going on in CBRS generally, and then maybe a thought on the Verizon strategy.
I think CBRS is certainly the spectrum tool in the United States for enterprises to get into building their own private 5G network. Yeah. Right. And without them having to beg for spectrum from operators like T-Mobile, right? Originally, when I saw what Verizon did, I thought they were going to try to build a private network business out of it. But it looks like, from results from the last 2 weeks, they actually did deploy some of it themselves, except that it doesn't support 5G. CBRS doesn't. It only supports LTE, which is curious. So they sort of shot themselves in the foot when they got headlines that says Verizon's 4G is faster than their 5G. Here's the proof, right? So at the end of the day, I don't know what Verizon does sometimes, candidly.
Okay.
Including their fatal attraction with millimeter wave, other than they don't have any other spectrum to play with, and CBRS is just another opportunity. Now that they have spent $53 billion on C-band, I think that's where they're going to put all their focus on, not so much on CBRS. There are limitations of CBRS as well as in terms of the power and the fact that you do have to contend with secondary usage.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Ron, anything to add or Rick?
I would just say that I'd call CBRS sort of the sort of entry level way to get private networks. Is an obvious way, separate spectrum people haven't deployed. But it's not going to be enough. I mean, there might be more created over time. The other thing to look at is millimeter wave, because what we really want from a private network is not to have the same spectrum kind of interfere with the public network or vice versa. And millimeter wave just doesn't travel that far. So it has its own limitations, but in a campus environment, it's much different than trying to cover the entire US with millimeter wave. And so I think that there are interesting opportunities and options and spectrum outside of CBRS as well.
Got it. Last question, maybe Ron, for yourself is, earlier this morning we met with the ExecRoundtable team and kind of went through their outcomes. And one of the conversations was around the qual rock run of deploying 5G, right? So there's the big move from 4G LTE to 5G, just the base standards. And then there's a whole new set of functions like slicing and beamforming and others. When do you all expect to see carriers really starting to deploy more of those new network functions in their production networks? Is it a year out? Is it 2 years out? Is it happening already? Because there's a lot of noise around that. Good noise. People are questioning how can we use slicing. Is it useful for us? But I'd love to get your perspective, Ron, on that.
The industry, and I'm not even really think that we as operators can take credit for this. This is really our vendors trying to get us to buy into new technology. There's been a lot of hype around 5G for a long time, so I'm not surprised people have heard slicing and wondering why it's not here yet. One short answer is the pandemic has lengthened the time at which it will take. The 3GPP is a series of intensive meetings normally of people sitting in the same room and hashing through things, and that hasn't happened in the last year. And there has been progress forward, but you've started to see the deadlines for future releases slip as a result. The slicing is not yet fully formed in a standard, so it's not like you can go off and offer something that's end-to-end slicing today. So we do need to see that happen. The other thing that needs to happen, just to be clear, if you're not familiar with the standards, you need a standalone network in order to do these features, whether it's ultra reliable or low latency or slicing. And I believe globally we're still the only one that has an SA network, certainly in the US, and we were the first. And I think that's a low-hanging fruit that has to be first embraced before you can think about any of these other features. And so we're already on that path, and we have to wait for the vendors to catch up with some of these capabilities before we can start even trialing them with folks in this cohort. It's still too early for at least for end-to-end work like that.
Yep. Well,
I think that's the key point. You need a standalone network to unlock all these capabilities, Jim.
Yeah.
Right. I think every other 5G network in this country and certainly what our competitors are building is still anchored on LTE. Right. Now it helps them build their networks faster. They can do crazy things like dynamic spectrum sharing. But if you really want to unlock the low latency, highly reliable capability of 5G, someday you need to cut that apron strings to LTE.
Right.
And I don't think they have a way to do that yet.
Right. Well, there is that legacy to deal with. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. Well, John and Ron and the rest of the T-Mobile team, thank you for your time this afternoon to meet with all of our teams. As always, we really appreciate these great conversations. And again, thank you again for your time. I know there was an analyst meeting going on, John, so the fact that you're spending your time with us is really meaningful. So thank you. We appreciate it.
No, this is important. This is important what we do. And to all the members of Cohort 3, welcome again. And we really look forward to working with you and really look forward to untapping all your cool ideas and see if we can do something spectacular together. So thank you and welcome.